Hello friends. So this is the second video of Web API series, and this is the third chapter. And in this chapter, we will learn HTTP verbs. So in the HTTP verbs, we will learn like get, post, put, delete, and patch. So there are like a number of HTTP verbs in Web API, and we are going to see a few of them in this session. Okay. So in the previous session, we have already seen how we can take a VBPI project, then how we can like construct it, how we can uh, write actions in the VBPI, right, and how we can call this. So in the current session, we will see HTTP verbs which are supported by our RESTful Web API service. So the HTTP verbs is to handle different types of HTTP request. The MVC Web API framework includes HTTP GET, POST, PUT, and DELETE, and HTTP options and HTTP patch action verbs. You can apply one or more action verbs to the action method to handle different HTTP requests. There are following HTTP method. First is like GET. So basically it is used to retrieve the information from the server. Parameter will be appended in the query string. Okay, so second is like post. It is used to create new resource using Web API. Then third is put. So it is used to update the existing resource. Then head, it is used to identical to get accept that server do not return the message body. So it is mean that if we will use head HTTP verb, so it will not return any message body. Then next is like options. So it represents a request for information about the communication options supported by the web server. Then delete is used to delete the existing resources, and patch is used to like full or partial update to the existing resource. So in the interview, there is a asked question like the difference between put and patch. So basically, in put, we update the existing resource. So it is mostly in case of put, it is like we are updating any single object or any uh, one or two values. But in case of patch, it is mean that we are updating like full or partial. So in case of patch, we are updating like partial values uh, to the existing resource, and in case of put, we are updating the complete object, means whole object. Okay, so there are some examples they have given here for HTTP verbs. So they have taken like one controller, and it is generated from API controller. They have shown how they can means we can define and do these things. So instead of going through these things, we will create our example, and we will call or we will try this HTTP verbs from like Visual Studio. Okay, so let's flip to Visual Studio. Uh, so we are using Visual Studio 17 for MVC Web API. Okay, so make sure it is installed on uh, everyone's machine. Okay, so let's take a project. So I'm taking the existing project which we took for previous session. Fine. So make sure you will take a new web API project. So for this example, I'm taking one more new controller. So let me close this previous controllers. So let's take a new controller. You have to just right click on the controller folder and click on add option and select controller. From here you have to take web API to controller empty. Okay, and then add it. So we will call it like HTTP verbs. Okay, so that's fine, I think. Let's add this. Okay, you can see that this controller is added with this postfix value, that is controller, and it is inherited from API controller, right? Now we have to define this all HTTP methods into this. Okay, so I have already written this some methods. We will use this for our understanding. So this is one static method I have defined. This is it is like list of string, and we have stored this string values into that list. It is not a method actually. It is a list or list object, and which is having these three values: value 0, value 1, and value 2. Okay. Now let's define these methods. Okay, so I have defined first method, that is a get method, which is having return type of list of string. So it is mean that it is returning list of string values, and here we have defined that list which is having string values, right? So here what I have done, I have decorated this method with HTTP verb get, right? So this is the HTTP get verb, and method name is get, which is having no parameter. One more method we have defined here, that is again get, but it is having one parameter, that is id, right? So it is mean that it is returning list all means all data, right? Means it is literally returning collection of list, right? And this get method is returning specific value from the that list, right? It is depend on the index which we have passed it, right? So let's try this. Now we have to rebuild this the application whenever we have to run it. Okay. Okay, I'm running the application. As we know that we have to like provide the our controller name slash our action name, right? So controller name is http verb slash action name is get. So we have decorated this method with http get verb, and it is used to retrieve the data from server, right? When we will hit it, it will call that method, right? And it will return that list which is having these three values: value 0, value 1, and value 2. Okay, so we can see that it is retrieved this data from using http get method. If we have to call this method, overloaded method, which is having id parameter, in that case what we have to do, we have to provide this value as a query string to that url. So the syntax of query string is like question mark, then your parameter name equal to your value. So value is like id. If I say 1, if we call this, you can see that it has called this method, and you can see that the value which we provided from the url is available in the that id parameter. So in this case it will return the list value from the list which is having index of 1, right? So it has returned this value 1, right? So it was value 0, value 1, it has returned, right? So this is how we can use http get method, right? Now let's call the same http get method using uh, Fiddler. Let's open the Fiddler. So Fiddler is the application. In the morning, I think everyone has downloaded this. If not, then you can download this. I have shared that application setup right from the Google Drive. So in once you open this application, you have to go to on the Composer tab. On the Composer tab, you can see that the URL list here. Here we have a URL text box where we can provide the URL, right? And here are the list of HTTP verbs which we can perform on our web API, right? So if I have to call this method, what I will do, I will pass this URL here. Then I have to select your what verb type. So it is a get. Then we have to hit, right? We have to hit the URL, right? So this is how we can call it. Okay, so now it is called, right? And the value which we provided from Fiddler has showing here, right? So once it will uh, complete the request, you will get here 200 response. So here is our URL http://get id, right? And the response is showing 200. So 200 means what? It is the success response from the a web API. When you click on this um, URL response, you will find this value which was written from web API, right? So here is the format. It is showing JSON format, and header we have not provided any header, so it will not show any header. So but it will shows our response here, right? Okay, so this is how we can like use Fiddler. Okay, now if I have to call other method, for example get. So same way I can do that. Only I have to remove that query string value, right? So here is the response. Now you can see that it has written these three values, and it text viewer you will find these three values here, right? Okay, so this way we can call method from Fiddler, and if you are calling like HTTP get method and you have selected a wrong verb here for the same, so it will not work in that case, right? We got 405 error, right? So what is this error mean is method not allowed, right? So it did not find any method which is having name get and its HTTP verb type is post, right? Okay, now let's see other type, that is HTTP post, right? So HTTP get is basically used to retrieve the data from server or web API, right? Then post is used to add new resource into the existing resource, right? So here we have taken post method which is decorated with HTTP post, right? It is having string parameter as an input parameter, and variable name is value, right? And we have added this value into the list, right? So we what we will do is we will call this method, and again we will call our get method, so we will understand whether it has added that parameter or not, right? So let's run this again. Let's go to Fiddler. We cannot call post method from browser as we called get method previously, right? We cannot do that. So the method name is post, right? And there is one input parameter, that is a value parameter, right? So we have to pass this as a query string. So question mark colon equal to value. So value is like value 4, I would say, right? And let's call this. Okay, once we called it, we got here this value into that parameter, right? So make sure this parameter name and your that this value parameter name, query string parameter name must match, else it will not work. Okay, so it will add these values into that list, so we can see that value 0 1 2 and then 4 is added into that, right? So after this, if we will call our get method, we have to change these things, right? If we will call our get method, we will find our this new added value into that um, object, right? Okay, next is a post method. Post is done, right? Now put and delete is remaining over there. Let's take this together and work with these things. So here you can see that put method is having two parameter, id and value, right? So id is used to basically which means value you have to update. So this is the index of the value which you have to update, and the value means what? The value actually we have to like replace with, right? Okay, so let's run this again. So I think we must have that URL in the here, right? So let's call put. So as I said, put is having two parameter, id and value. So again, let's take a query string id equal to, I would say 0 or 1 we will take, and for second parameter we have to use and value equal to, we will say equal to value 10, and the method type is put, right? Let's call it. Okay, so it has called this method, right? Now id is 1 and value is value 10. So what is the value of at id1? So it is like value 1, right? And it will replace with value 10, right? Now it must have replaced. If we have to check it, you can again call that your get method, right? And type must be get. I am removing these things now. Okay, so it is value 10, right? And the last one is like HTTP delete. So it is having id parameter again. Question mark id equal to 1 and type is delete, right? If we'll call it, it will delete this value from the index. So we can see that it has deleted this. If again you will call that get method, you will find that value is deleted, right? You have to change the type here. Okay, so here we have only two values, right? So there are different kind of HTTP verbs, but mostly which we use, these are like get, post, put and delete. So in real time application, mostly we use get and post only. Okay, okay, so next topic is parameter binding, and in this the our most focus is like from body and from URI parameter things. So we have to understand what is the parameter binding in MVC web API. Okay. So in action method in web API controller can have one or more parameters of different types. Okay, it can be either primitive type or complex type. So I will tell you what is the difference between primitive and complex type. Web API binds action method parameter either with URLs, query string, or with the request body, depending on the parameter type. By default, if parameter type is of .NET primitive type such as integer, boolean, double string, I don't know what is this, date time, okay, decimal or any other type that can be converted from string type, then it sets the value of the parameter from the query string. Okay. So we have just seen in our examples, means by default, the parameter which we provided for method were by default considered as a query string, and it is received value from query string only, right? So the primitive parameter are the parameter which are like integer string or float, which are not complex parameter in short. Okay. And these are by default considered from the query string parameter, right? And if the parameter type is complex type, then web API tries to get the value from request body by default. Okay. So in short, whenever the parameter are primitive, means simple type, that time it finds that parameter into the by default into the query string. If it is complex, so complex means okay, what, like a student object or any item master object. So these are called complex object. So these are by default uh, MVC will be find into the request body. So we will see the difference of URL, URI, and request body. Okay. So we will see these things through Fiddler only. So here we have this method HTTP get, post, put, patch, delete, right? And they have given the acceptance criteria of the parameter type. So in get, it will accept query string parameter um, for primitive and complex also, right? So okay, and get method does not accept parameter from body. Okay, post accept primitive parameter from query string and complex from request body. Okay, then put also accept primitive type from query string and complex type from body. Okay, patch also has the same concept. Only delete accept primitive type and complex type from query string only. Okay. So in the interview, there is a mostly asked question: does get parameter accept request body? So answer is no. Okay. Does delete accept? No. So what is the acceptance criteria of post method for uh, from your and from body? So make sure you will remember this table in your mind. Okay. Now they have shown one simple example here, like they have defined one student controller which is having return type as a student. Okay, and defined get method name, right? It is having ID parameter. So this is an example of primitive type. So we can pass this ID from URI, right? So only the thing is what, make sure the parameter name is case sensitive in the uh, URL. Okay, in the query string. So make sure the parameter name, whatever you have defined, you have to define the same parameter name into the query string. Okay. They have given here in the note, query string parameter name and action method parameter name must be the same, case sensitive. If names does not match, then values of the parameter will not be set. Okay. The order of the parameter can be different, right? Okay. Here is the example they have given for multiple parameter binding. So we can have like multiple parameters. So you can separate the parameter by using AND operator in the query string, right? We have done this also, right? So here is the example they have given here, right? So we can use URL parameter for HTTP GET. Okay. So HTTP post request is used to create new resource. It can include request data into HTTP request body and also in the query string. So we can pass data from body as well as from your query string too. Okay. So here is the example they have given. They have taken two parameter. They have taken two parameter ID and string name, right? So using our like URI, you can do these things. And the same thing, if you want some complex object which we have to accept from what we can say from the server, then we can do this using from body. I'll show you the syntax of these things and how we can pass these things using our URL body, right? So let's flip to Visual Studio. Okay, here we have defined that post method. Okay, let's take this put method. So here what we will do here, we will define from body uh, attribute here, right? So here the default attribute is from URI, right, for put, and this attribute I have defined from body, so it is mean that this must be come from body only, right? So we can define for this also, but let's test this for this only, for value only. So let's run the application and we will see how we can accept from body parameter. Okay, so let's go to Fiddler. I think we must have that URL available in the Fiddler, right? What was the method name? It was put, right? So I have defined method name. Then by default parameter is it should come from URL, right? So URL should be like question mark, then ID equal to your value, right? And HTTP type is put. If I will hit this, it will call that method, but you can see that the value is null, right? So why value is null? Because we have not provided the value. We have just passed ID from URL. So how we can pass value, right? So we can pass it from our body. So the type is string, right? So we can pass in the single quote. So if I will pass value 100, now if I will call this method again, okay. So in this case, I have to define the your media type. So here you have to define the content type. So the content type dash type colon. So whenever you will pass the value from body, you have to define its type. So here we have defined type content type colon application slash JSON. So in that case only it will be able to send the values to the server. So here you can see that ID equal to 1 and value equal to 100, right? So this way you can pass values um, from body, right? Now if for example, if I have defined here for get string, we don't have, for HTTP get we don't have from body, right, parameter for if, but in case of this uh, that put method, we can define here that from URI attribute also. So here we can define from URI if we have to make sure it must be come from URL only. So in that case we can define that attribute. बट ये केस में हमने क्या किया, यहाँ पे फ्रॉम बॉडी एट्रीब्यूट डिफाइन किया है एंड इट मस्ट बी कम फ्रॉम बॉडी ओनली, राइट? We can also get some complex object from the server. So let's try one complex object. let's take this class here. So I have taken this class here, right? So this is the item master class. I would say item master 1. Okay. And define one post method. Let's define one post method. I am defining this here at the last. Here post item. I am naming that method. So this is my complex object and it must be come from URI only, right? Sorry, body only. So here you must define from body itself. Even you will not define it from body, it will find it into the body only, right? I am writing nothing inside this. अगर मैं यहाँ पे from body भी define नहीं करूंगा तो due to it is a complex type, it will find into body only for that parameter, right? So let's run the application. And let's go to here. So here what I have to do is only I have to pass the action name, then I have to define that content type colon application slash JSON, and here I have to pass the our complex object. So the syntax of passing complex object is like, I will show you this. I think we have this available here, right? So in curly bracket we have to pass it, right? And only the parameter name should match with our complex object. So parameter is like item ID, right? It should be, I think, item ID colon 1 comma then item name colon some name. Let's see if it works. Mhm. Is it single quote or double quote? Let us take this into the notepad. So it is not there, right? And it should be in the single quote, right? This is the syntax, but it should be post, right? Okay, so this way we can pass complex object from uh, our client application or Fiddler to web API, right? So this way we can get this value. Make sure this parameter which are given in the that JSON and the parameter which are given in our complex object, we have to give the same, right? Okay. So this was the only difference between like from URI and from body. So make sure you would have understood these things. And in the last, they have given this simple designing like primitive complex from primitive